This is the video that Victoria Police don't want you to see. They fought hard for 2 years to suppress this. In fact, what I can show you is only a small, such a small clip of the damning evidence of their criminal behaviour. After you watch this video, you will be calling for the resignation of Shane Patton because all this happened under his watch, under his approval. So let me set the scene here. On the 6th of August 2021, I was falsely arrested, assaulted, tortured by members of the Victoria Police. The arrest was retaliatory. I happened to be walking past the North Wyndham Police Station, exercising my democratic rights to free speech, when I saw a police officer driving in, opening the gate to the car park with his swipe card, and I said to him something along the lines of enabling tyranny. His excuse was, if I say anything, I'll lose my job. So I told him he was prostituting himself for the government and that just following orders is no excuse. Now, you may agree or disagree with me saying that, but the fact is, it's a democratic right that we have in this country of free speech. We shouldn't be arrested for expressing our opinion to a police officer. Retaliatory policing is just unprofessional. It's about responding to your feelings being hurt, your pride being hurt. It's about being on a power trip. It's about feeling good about being the one in power and in control. And it's picking on someone, not because they broke the law, but because they hurt your feelings. This type of policing is just not on. This type of policing needs to stop. Now, this whole matter was raised with IBAC, and IBAC is Victoria's independent, broad-based anti-corruption commission or something like that. Anyway, they thought it wasn't in the public interest. So make sure you tell me whether you think this is in the public interest or not. So before I knew it, 2 officers came out. Now, these officers, they don't want their names released. They fought very hard that the very little footage that I have got, their faces are blacked out, their name badges are blacked out. But I have no problem in naming and shaming these guys who have no place in an organisation with the motto, uphold the right. So these 2 officers, Sergeant O'Meara and Sergeant Risdale, approached me, and through some audio that I captured, this is what they said.
Mate, what's your reason for being out and about?
I'm doing my exercising.
No, you're not. What's your name, buddy? Show us your name and date of birth. Need to prove who you are. All right, you're under arrest, mate. What? You're under arrest.
So they immediately escalated this interaction with violence. What should have happened is they said, we believe that you are breaching the Chief Health Officer's orders and we're enforcing that today. Please provide your details so we can issue you a fine. To which I would have said, I don't understand how, since I'm allowed out of my house for 1 hour or whatever it was. However, I'll argue that in court. Sure, write me a fine. Here's my ID, and we would have addressed it in court. And that would have been the end of the interaction. I would have followed them into the police station, let them write out a ticket. I would have got the ticket. I would have faced a judge, possibly, and said, how is being out of my home for an hour in front of a police station a crime? By the way, I was never charged with anything. They dropped every bogus charge they had against me about breaching Chief Health Officer's orders, etc., etc. That was all dropped before any court, because there was nothing there. They knew I'd done nothing wrong, and they wanted to bury this as quickly as they could. So the charges were dropped. But the officers knew that they couldn't arrest me simply for breaching Chief Health Officer's orders. It's not an arrestable offence, that in itself. So they tried to make it about me refusing to give my ID. The only problem is I didn't refuse to give my ID. They just didn't let me answer. They didn't give me a chance. The only thing I said was, and the reason I did that was I wanted to have time to press the video record button on my phone as well as audio. We could see all this, only they've suppressed the body cam footage. There's no way they would release that under freedom of information. So immediately they went to arrest mode with violence. They put their hands on me and they attempted to throw me to the concrete. That in itself is not an appropriate use of force to arrest somebody. I was posing no threat. I was showing no violence. They gave no direction. That what he wanted me to do was put my hands behind my back and was grabbing my arm trying to yank it back. If you had said, put your hands behind your back, I want to handcuff you, I would have said something like, sure, but do you mind doing it in front of me? Because my arms don't actually stretch behind my back. It's physically not a thing that my body is shaped in a way that I don't have that flexibility. You will cause harm and pain to my body if you do that. But they weren't into having a conversation. They'd already decided that their level was violence. That was what they intended. And so I could feel that they were trying to throw me to the ground. And in my mind, I'm thinking, this is a false arrest. They have no legal grounds to arrest me. I have every right to fight back, but I'm not going to. I just don't want to be slammed onto the concrete because I'll get injured. So then they started saying to me, relax, relax, relax. You got to relax. Why? Because they wanted to throw me to the ground. They got terribly frustrated because as much as two grown men tried, they couldn't throw me to the ground. I wasn't doing anything other than just standing there. Then I was threatened with more violence if I didn't let them throw me to the ground. I was threatened with capsicum spray. So I moved over to the grass area with one of them either side of me, trying to drag me to the ground, and knelt down on the grass and absolutely submitted in a non-violent way. I put my arms to the side. I couldn't put them behind my back because I physically am not able to. And that's when the violence began. They began slapping me and kneeing into my body.
Be compliant, huh? Okay, be compliant, listen.
Wrenching my arms back to a position that they're not made to go. And there's two types of handcuffs that are issued in Victoria. And one of them is like your standard type of cuffs. They don't fit my wrists. I've got big wrists. So putting it on, even putting it on the last notch, they don't fit. Now, a good officer would identify that, because what you have to understand is the role of the police is not to punish wrongdoers. That's not their role. Professional police officers are there to apprehend offenders, yes, but to inflict pain on them as punishment is not a part of their job description. It's not a reasonable use of force. Punishment comes from the judge when a guilty verdict is found, and that punishment will not be violence. It'll be either incarceration or a monetary penalty. But that's not for the police to decide. I'm going to punish this person because I don't like the way they are. I don't like what they're standing for. I don't like the way I feel disrespected because I can't throw him to the ground. Now, when it comes to a police officer asking you for identification, according to the law, you're only required to give identification if they suspect you of committing a crime. But first, they must clearly articulate to you what crime they think you are committing. The police officer must inform the person of the grounds for his or her belief in sufficient detail to allow the person to understand the nature of the offence or suspected offence. In my mind, I'm thinking that I'm in the clear because there's no crime. I wasn't in a crowd of people. I was within 5 kilometres from my home, and an exemption for wearing a mask. I hadn't been out of my home for more than, I think it was a couple of hours back then, was the time frame that you're allowed out of your house. So in my mind, I was within the law. So for them to say, give us your ID, my response was going to be, sure, can you please explain me clearly what crime I'm committing? And we could have had a discussion of which I could have said, look, I disagree, but anyway, you write me up a fine and we'll argue it before the judge. That's fine. So there's another level of why this was a false arrest, because they never clearly articulated what crime I was suspected of committing. It jumped from, you're in breach of the Chief Health Officer's guidelines. I said, no, I'm not. Rather than explain to me their rationale for believing that I was, it went to, what is your ID? And from there, they didn't even let me answer that question. It was violence from then on. After I was restrained in handcuffs, I was held to the ground, pinned to the ground by force, with knees on my neck and on my arm, sitting on me for over 7 minutes all up. That activity is enough to kill somebody. It's called positional asphyxia. When you're treating someone this way, you're basically playing Russian roulette with their life, because you don't know the factors that are involved. You don't know their state of fitness. You don't know if they're on any medication. You don't know how their body will react to what you're doing to it. So some people will die, other people might pull through. But it's not a game you want to play. You're playing with people's lives. There's no excuse for any police officer in 2021 when this happened, because it was only, I think, the year before when George Floyd was killed by positional asphyxia. That was the coroner's report that came out. That is how he died. That is why the police were charged with murder. So every police officer in Australia should know, okay, you hold someone on the ground while they're handcuffed, put your knee on their neck, just like they did with George Floyd, you might actually kill them. But Sergeant O'Meara and Sergeant Risdale didn't seem to care. They were enjoying torturing and inflicting pain on me too much. They were enjoying their power trip too much. I'm not making up stories here about the seriousness of positional asphyxia. Let's look at some recent tragedies in Australia. There's been numerous, but the one that popped up first when I did a Google search was this one in New South Wales, where the guards, it was found out they lacked the training. This is pre-George Floyd. They didn't know that they could kill someone by holding them down while they were handcuffed. In America, it's been more prevalent simply because of a greater population, a greater policing. But you have, just back in the 3rd of March 2020, so just before all these lockdowns started happening, a guy called Manuel Ellis says he was hog-tied face down with an officer on him for at least 6 minutes. 6 minutes was enough for him to be killed. Another recent death in custody was Daniel Prude. Apparently he was only forcibly held down for 2 minutes and 15 seconds. After 3 minutes and 10 seconds, he'd stop breathing. So that's what I mean. Positional asphyxia is Russian roulette. You don't know whether it's going to be 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or 11 minutes. You can't possibly know if you're restraining someone. That is why their training, the Victoria Police training, says that you should have someone restrained on the ground for the absolute minimum of what is necessary. You don't play around with their lives. You don't torture them, trying to extract information from them. Let's have a look at the training that I found from Victoria Police. Now, this looks like an old training document that they used for maybe training security guards or PSOs or something like that. But I won't go through all of it with you because this video will be too long, and there's important stuff we need to get through and video footage. So one of the signs and symptoms that someone's dying of positional asphyxia is that there's an increased panic, prolonged resistance. When the police officers had dropped me on my head, I was concussed, and I know that because my memories of that afternoon was that it was nighttime. That's how affected my brain was for them dropping me on my head. I honestly thought it was nighttime. They took me into the back of the Sally Port, and instead of walking me to the cell, they put me on the ground again and sat on me again. I was showing no signs of violence, no signs of... And you'll be able to see that if the cowards in Victoria Police release the body cam footage. They could do that if they thought I was lying, prove what really happened in that Sally Port. But I've applied for that body cam footage. It's been rejected, my application. I've appealed, and once again, they've denied me that body cam footage. They dragged me into the holding cell where they attempted to take off the handcuffs which they had forced on me. So I was lying face down with a knee in my back while one guy fumbled around for over a minute while my arms are getting wrenched back, and I was screaming in pain, simply in pain. I have not experienced that level of pain that I can recall in recent years anyway. So I'm screaming. Now that would be symptom number 4, increased panic. And then of course they finally get these handcuffs off and leave me face down. That there is neglect of duty, a duty of care. You do not leave someone that you've just sat on for 7 minutes, restrained in handcuff, face down. You sit them up. There's no excuse, oh, but I was scared. I thought he might get up and hurt me. No, I'm about to die. You need to sit me up. That's your duty of care so that I can breathe. So then we have symptom number 5, which is sudden tranquility, where the person suddenly becomes quiet, tranquil, and not moving. I'll quickly go on to the prevention strategies that Victoria Police recommend in their own training document. Physical restraint should only be used when the situation clearly justifies it and there is no other option available to prevent physical harm to the person or others for the shortest possible time with the least reasonable force. Now, I argue in this whole interaction there was no need for any force whatsoever. But even if they argued it's our policy to handcuff everyone that we arrest, there's no need to put me on the ground and knee me in the head, and especially when I was showing no signs of aggression or violence. It says here, avoid prone restraint unless absolutely necessary. Consider alternative methods for resolution. The person should be repositioned from face down prone position as soon as practical. So in this case, the police officers could have, at the moment they said they were going to write me a ticket, we could have just simply walked in. There's no need to arrest me. I wasn't showing any signs of aggression. They could have just said, we think you're in breach of the CHO's directions. How about you walk into the station here and we'll write you a ticket? Yeah, no worries. Walk in. No violence. That would have been good policing. But as I said before, this was a retaliatory arrest. This was not based on anything other than their need to feel powerful, in control. When you torture another human being, it shows that you are somehow deranged in your sense of what gives you enjoyment, and you definitely shouldn't be a police officer. Now, I kept saying tortured. Yes, let's look at the definition of what torture is. Let's see what Cambridge has to say. The dictionary definition of torture is the act of causing great physical or mental pain in order to persuade someone to do something or give information, or to be cruel to a person or animal. So the right to not be tortured is actually a non-negotiable human right. It doesn't matter what the circumstances are. You could be at war, you could be dealing with a terrorist, you could be dealing with the worst type of person ever, but there is no excuse whatsoever in any circumstance to torture somebody. This is what is talked about on an Australian government website. It talks about absolute rights. They're also referred to as non-derogable rights. That's a big word, a big legal word that I found out that people in the Human Rights Department didn't even know that word existed. But we can see there, one of the non-derogable, in other words, it's not negotiable. You cannot suspend, even in a state of emergency, and it goes there, freedom from torture or cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment or punishment, and freedom from medical or scientific experimentation without consent. So in my case, I was being tortured at the hands of police as they tried to extract that ever-important confession of my name as they sat on me for 7 minutes trying to extract this information. Torturing someone is a Commonwealth crime in Australia. There's a law called Crimes Against Humanity. It includes torture. And if you break it, there's up to 17 years jail. So in my case, the Officer Ridsdale and O'Meara, after they had handcuffed me, they searched my pockets and pulled out my wallet. And in my wallet was my photo ID, my driver's license. That is sufficient for me identifying myself. Clearly, it is my ID. For some reason, they wanted me to state my name. Now that's going beyond what is required. That's just having a power trip, okay? I'm aware that their body cam is on, and I don't want to state my name in front of a camera to possibly one day be used against me out of context. So anyway, they thought that I should state my name. And I thought, you've already got my ID, so let's get moving. But no, they inflicted pain on me. They continued to ask me. Let's see how many times they asked me for my ID while they were sitting on me inflicting pain. Now, when I complained about O'Meara's knee on my neck and him sitting on me, he denies it. His body cam footage is not facing down at what his knees are doing, it's facing up. So when I say get your knee off my neck, he says, what are you talking about? He lies. He blatantly lies. And I call this behaviour by policemen as absolutely disgraceful. Hang your head in shame, O'Meara. You do not deserve to wear a badge. Your excuse for restraining me on the ground is for your own safety. What a joke. I'm in handcuffs. like a turtle on my back. I can't move. If you're afraid of your safety, walk a couple of meters away. I can't get you. There's no need to sit on me. You're the one with a gun and you're scared of me. So here's the thing. When you say it's for your safety, there's one of two possibilities. That is true and you really are a coward. Or two, that is your ruse, your little game that you play that gives you an excuse to inflict pain on people and punish people and abuse people. You're trying to find a loophole in the use of reasonable force that you can say, I was scared for my safety. I know the games you play, but I prefer to call you a coward. So after I'd been tortured, after I'd been sat on for over 7 minutes while handcuffed with a knee on my neck, they left me face down in a police cell with no signs of life. A gross neglect of your duty of care. So I want to call out O'Meara and Ridsdale for the cowards that they are, but also on the scene was Constable Zoran and Senior Constable Lee Laurie. Now, Zoran and Lee Laurie, they stood around. I'm not sure which one is which, but I think it was Zoran who dropped me on my head, told me to sit on the ground like I was a dog. What do you mean, like a dog? Because he said, sit, boo-boo, sit. That's what you said. That's out of a sitcom of talking about a dog. You're the dog. You're a pig. That's not professional. And the other one, C. Laurie, stood and let it all happen, watched it happen, didn't once say, hey, let's get him off the ground. You're all as guilty as each other. Let me say, after everything that I've shown and talked about, what does Victoria Police say about this incident? This is the response to my complaint. It went to their complaints department, it went to their professional standards command, and it was investigated by Limara Fairgrieve. Now, here's a lady that loves her career more than integrity. She wants to climb the ranks of Victoria Police at the expense of doing the right thing. Even though the motto is uphold the right, you uphold what your corrupt seniors tell you to do. Because she verbally told me over the phone that she'd recommended that these guys get criminally prosecuted. But people higher up from her said that she's to write a letter to say that they did nothing wrong. So it says in this letter, upon review, blah, 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 it was determined that the arrest was appropriate and in accordance with law, policy, and accepted police practice. Now, if you see what happened in this video, so you're saying basically that it's fine, it's acceptable to start using violent force on somebody to arrest them, to play Russian roulette with their life, to sit them on the sidewalk and sit on them while they're restrained and torture them. You're putting your name to that to say that is acceptable. That's why, Shane Patton, you need to stand down. Your police force is a disgrace. So anyway, so here I was, face down in a police holding cell, scared for my life because I understood the dangers of positional asphyxia and what I had gone through. I felt that life was ebbing away from me. It was getting dark. It was getting hard to even find the energy to breathe. I felt like going to sleep, but I thought if I go to sleep, I may not wake up. This is where they should have called an ambulance. My life is at threat. You can see I am breathing, but it's not enough to get the oxygen that I need into my body. I need deep breaths, not shallow breaths. And while I was there, I thought, oh, this is it. I'm going to die. I started to pray. I said, God, is this it? Is this how it ends? Me face down in a police holding cell? And I heard the voice of God say, no, I've got more work for you to do. And that gave me hope to hold on, to focus on breathing, to let the oxygen refuel my body and let the blood start flowing, to get myself out of the death spin that my body was on and to come back out of it. Now, I'm going to put this into fast forward because it's something like 20 minutes or something of me lying face down. And it's sometime before they check on me. And even when they checked on me, they came in and they belittled me, called me a baby, get off the ground, you big baby. I managed to tell them I can't, my arms won't work. That's what I said to them, my arms won't work. But they were too scared to assist me. They didn't want to help me up so I could breathe. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how you kill somebody if you're a police officer. I believe I'm alive today by a miracle. It's only by a miracle. It's only by the grace of God that I'm not another death in custody statistic. What was my crime? I dared to walk in front of a police station holding a sign saying human rights matter. That was my crime. And here I am, The violence escalated to a point where I'm inches to within an inch of my death. That is not how you're supposed to treat Australian citizens. I'm calling for the arrest of Ridsdale and O'Meara and Zoran and Lee Laurie. I'm calling for an investigation by IBAC against the Professional Standards Command, who write that it was determined that the arrest was appropriate and was in accordance with the law. It definitely was not in accordance to the law. I'm calling for the resignation of Commissioner Shane Patton. You've let the people of Victoria down. You sold us out. You have no place. We do not want you. Do the right thing. Surrender. In fact, you should be on trial for crimes against humanity. The way that you treated the Victorian public, shooting them with rubber bullets, that's use of force with a potentially lethal weapon. People, statistically 1 in 100 people die from rubber bullets. You played Russian roulette with unarmed, non-violent Victorian citizens. You need to go, Shane Patton. You need to go. You allowed your force to be taken over as a Gestapo for dictator Dan to inflict terror on the good people of Victoria. You brought mercenaries in and deputised them, which is no less than a crime against humanity. You were involved with a persecution of a political group that Dan Andrew called anti-lockdowners, anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, and you persecuted them. That's a breach of Commonwealth law with a penalty of 17 years prison. That's where you belong. Our police force deserves better than you. Any police officer who sees this message, who watches this video, I call upon you. Do the right thing. Uphold the right. Call for the resignation of Shane Patton. We don't care about your pay dispute when you treat us like this.